What if the aircraft that became the face of Germany's air power also had one of the deadliest flaws? The Bf 109 was the most produced fighter in history, with over 33,000 units built. But behind its fame lies a dark truth that cost more lives than anyone would have imagined. When the Bf 109 was introduced in 1937, it was unlike anything the world had ever seen. Fast, heavily armed, and constantly evolving, the Bf 109 quickly became the backbone of the Luftwaffe, Germany's air force, during World War II. It played a key role in major battles like the Battle of Britain, where it faced off against Allied fighters. But even though it dominated the skies, it was far from perfect. The Bf 109's original design was impressive, featuring an all-metal frame, a closed cockpit, and advanced aerodynamics. It was so ahead of its time that many thought it could change the course of the war. But as the war went on, the true dangers of this fighter became evident, not just from enemy fire, but from a fatal flaw that led to the death of many of its pilots. The Bf 109's narrow undercarriage was the main issue that led to the high death toll among pilots. While the aircraft's aerodynamic design made it fast and deadly, it also made ground handling extremely unstable. The landing gear was mounted directly to the fuselage, which gave the plane a clean aerodynamic profile, but left it prone to violent tip-overs or crashes, especially on takeoff and landing. Even a small mistake or uneven terrain could cause disaster. This problem was so dangerous that during training alone, over 1,700 Luftwaffe pilots were killed in non-combat accidents. This deadly flaw in the Bf 109's design led to the loss of a large number of pilots, even before they had the chance to fight the enemy. It was one of the war's darker, more tragic truths. Thousands of young German pilots died due to a design flaw, and they would never even see the enemy they were trained to fight. When the Battle of Britain began, the Bf 109 was thrown into intense combat against the British Spitfires and Hurricanes. The 109 was fast, had heavy armament, and was well suited to dogfighting. However, there was one major issue. The Bf 109 had a very short range. The fighters had to take off from airfields in France, cross the English Channel, engage the enemy, and then return to base. But by the time the 109s crossed into British airspace, they were running low on fuel. This meant that many pilots had to break off the engagement before they could fully protect their bombers. Many pilots lost their lives in the channel due to running out of fuel, which became a devastating problem for the Luftwaffe during the early stages of the war. The Bf 109's speed and firepower made it an incredible fighter, but its short range made it an impractical choice for long missions. The fact that so many pilots were lost due to this flaw, without ever even engaging the enemy, made this problem even more tragic. Despite these early challenges, the Bf 109 continued to evolve, becoming a symbol of German air superiority. But what truly set the 109 apart from other fighters? How did it become the deadliest aircraft in terms of ace kills? If you want more untold stories like this one, hit that subscribe button, because our videos may as well change how you see the war. The Bf 109 was responsible for some of the highest scores in aerial combat. Pilots like Erich Hartmann, who claimed 352 kills, became the highest scoring fighter ace of all time. But how did these pilots reach such incredible numbers? The answer is not just skill and speed, but also the tragic reality that German pilots were often pushed to their limits. Unlike Allied pilots, who were rotated in and out of combat for rest and reassignment, German pilots rarely got a break. They were often kept on the front lines until they were either killed or severely injured. This meant that the longer a pilot survived, the more kills they racked up. However, survival was not guaranteed. Many of the most famous aces of the Luftwaffe were killed before the war ended. One of the darkest truths behind these high kill counts was that the pilots were not given much of a choice. They either kept flying or died. This constant pressure and lack of rotation led to fatigue, which ultimately contributed to the high fatality rate among pilots. While these pilots were hailed as heroes, their real cost came in the form of exhaustion, trauma, and of course, death. Despite the inherent flaws in its design, the Bf 109 continued to evolve and adapt to the changing needs of the war. One of the most significant upgrades was its weaponry. As the war progressed, the 109 was outfitted with heavier and more powerful guns to help it take on increasingly well-armored Allied bombers. The G variant of the 109, introduced in 1942, was fitted with two 13mm machine guns and a 20mm motor cannon. This gave the aircraft more stopping power, allowing it to engage bombers more effectively. Some versions of the G model even included optional underwing gondolas carrying additional 20mm cannons or rockets, giving it a fearsome ability to destroy enemy bombers or ground targets. However, this added firepower came at a price: speed and maneuverability. The more weapons the 109 carried, the less agile it became. The aircraft's once dominant performance in dogfights began to diminish, especially as newer, faster Allied fighters like the P-51 Mustang came into play. The 109, once feared for its speed and firepower, was now struggling to keep up with the changing tides of the war. As the war dragged on, the Bf-109's role in the Luftwaffe became more desperate. The German Air Force was severely weakened by fuel shortages, a lack of experienced pilots, and relentless Allied bombing campaigns that destroyed factories and infrastructure. The 109, once a symbol of German air superiority, was now a desperate last stand for the Luftwaffe. By the time the Allies began their bombing raids over Germany, the 109 was pulled into a defensive role. The pilots, already worn out and undertrained, were often forced into combat with poorly maintained aircraft and limited resources. The high kill rates of earlier years began to fall, as more and more pilots were lost in poorly coordinated defensive missions. Despite all of its technological advancements, the Bf-109 couldn't withstand the overwhelming power of the Allies. The days of the German fighter ace were coming to an end, and the Bf-109's place in history was sealed, not just as a powerful aircraft, but as a symbol of the high cost of war. The 109 didn't just leave its mark on history because of its design. It's the pilots who flew it that we remember most. These men weren't just soldiers, they were trapped in a deadly cycle, pushed to their limits until they either fell or fought their way to survival. For many of them, the Bf-109 was a tool for survival, not glory. The harsh reality was that the longer a pilot survived, the more kills they would accumulate, but survival itself was unlikely. Many pilots died young, sometimes within their first few missions, while others flew until the very end, never making it out of the war. The fact that so many high-scoring aces didn't survive is a testament to the brutal nature of aerial combat. Erich Hartmann is often held up as the symbol of the Bf-109's legacy, but his story is bittersweet. The life of an ace wasn't as glamorous as it might seem. For Hartmann and other top scorers, the constant pressure to fly missions, coupled with the exhaustion and danger of non-stop combat, took a serious toll. The psychological scars were as deep as the physical ones. Many of the Luftwaffe's most famous pilots were left with lifelong trauma. Despite its status as a legendary fighter, the Bf-109's production and use also reveal a dark truth about the war. The Luftwaffe's dependence on the 109 was a sign of their desperation. As the war turned against Germany, their need for experienced pilots grew more and more urgent. They couldn't replace their losses quickly enough, and as a result, the average lifespan of a Bf-109 pilot became dangerously short. By the end of the war, it was clear that the 109 was no longer the superior fighter it had once been. The weight of attrition had rendered it less effective. Allied planes like the P-51 Mustang and P-47 Thunderbolt, both of which had better speed, maneuverability, and firepower, proved superior. But the 109 still had one last role to play, as a symbol of German determination and the ultimate cost of war.